well. So that game sucked, right? What is up, Broncos country, and welcome to another episode of Keep Your Eye on the Ball, my YouTube channel dedicated to all things Denver Bronco football. And as you could tell from the intro, I'm a little bummed. I'm still a little bummed about the result on Sunday, which we will get into a little bit, obviously. But if you've been living under a rock for the last 24 hours, you would know that the Broncos had a quarterback change and will now be going to Jarrett Stidham over Russell Wilson, who has been benched for the remaining 2 games of the season and will most likely be moved in the offseason. So this week's episode is going to be dedicated entirely to Russ, and we're going to be talking about some of the particulars, and we're going to be talking about what we do going forward. But before we do that, remember to like, remember to share, remember to subscribe, remember to buy me presents, and we'll jump right into the episode. So we're going to try to break this into chunks. I'm not trying to go super in-depth into any one of these, and I'll be mostly just giving a 2-minute explainer on what happened and my thoughts in regards to that. So to jump into it right away with both feet, why was Russ benched? Now, if you watch the press conference, and I did because I'm a loser and a nerd, Sean Payton intimated that the offense needed a spark and that he couldn't replace all 5 offensive line starters. He couldn't replace all of his backs and wideouts, so a change needed to be made. This was the only place he could make it. Now, I believe that Sean Payton is largely right on this. Now, Adam, you're probably asking, you just said that Russ was having a good year. Russ was excelling as being a game manager. Why would you say that Sean Payton was right? Now, Denver did have success early on in the year when they were scripting plays out for Russ and on first drives of the game at the start of the game. We have not seen that, even during the winning streak. All the points they were putting up were largely in the second half, and there weren't long, sustained drives that were resulting in touchdowns. If the defense wasn't turning the ball over and giving Denver short fields, the offense wasn't producing. The offense had also gone very, very conservative and seemed to be trending more and more conservative with Russ at the controls. So while I don't necessarily agree with that spark narrative that Sean Payton is using, I also do believe that we saw the ceiling of where Russ could be in the offense. And I even pointed that out on more than one occasion in my TikTok videos and in some of my channels here. Russ was doing good as a game manager, but we also saw the limitations of what he could do in that role, and we also saw that the offense and defense, the talent on both sides of the ball, were not enough to overcome mistakes when he made them. We saw that in the Houston loss, and we saw that in the game on Sunday. So while it's a cutthroat business and you really hate seeing a guy that was asked to do something completely out of his wheelhouse and do reasonably well at, it still doesn't change the fact that we saw how far it could go and it still wasn't good enough, and that's why we needed to make the change. So now that we are exiting the Russell Wilson era of the Denver Bronco franchise, the next logical conclusion and the next questions are, what do we do? Now, I'll cover this in the short term and I'll cover this in the long term. Short term, they will be going to Jarrett Stidham for the next 2 games. Stidham was a free agent quarterback that we signed in the offseason to basically a 2-year, $10 million deal. I don't have the specifics in front of me, but that's essentially what it was. He will be the quarterback bearing injury for the next 2 games. Stidham did have a audition with the Raiders last season, where he started the last 2 games of their season, and he played okay. Didn't play great, didn't play bad. He was also drafted by the New England Patriots, and he actually was thought to be the starter in the in between after Tom Brady retired. He was that well thought of in the organization. Now, I don't have enough insight onto Stidham to give a fair assessment of if he's just a really good backup or not. I will get to some of the chatter and conspiracy theories that have come with Stidham being inserted into the starting lineup. I think he's going to be a good backup, and I think he's gonna do okay on Sunday, and then for the following game against Vegas for the finale. What I think people should really temper their expectations on is that the offense is going to look pretty similar. They're not gonna air it out. It's not gonna look like a well-oiled machine. At least odds would say that it won't with a backup quarterback. Also, the Broncos will be missing their top 3 wideouts going into the game on Sunday, so that'll be another reason to manage expectations. This is going to be a ball control, methodical, vanilla offense for the last 2 games of the year. It does not matter that Stidham is behind center, just like it didn't matter that Russ was behind center. It's also kind of important to keep in mind that Russ was a leader, and he was one of the trusted guys in the locker room. And now not to have that out there, you may not see as an inspired an effort on Sunday without Russ being in the lineup. I mean, it's hard to say. They could go air it out, make it look like the Don Coryell Chargers, and Jarrett Stidham may be the missing piece that we've been looking for all year. Or it's going to look roughly the same, just with a number 4 on the back of the jersey. I am leaning towards the latter. I hope I am wrong. But in the short term, it's going to be Jarrett Stidham. The offense isn't going to look that much different. It's going to be very conservative. And we're largely going to be dependent on the defense getting us turnovers in order to produce points like we normally have. So if you're expecting something different, kudos to your optimism. I just don't see that happening, though. So now we enter the long-term part of what to do without Russ. And ideally, I think the most logical step is that they will go to the draft looking for their next quarterback. Obviously, there's going to be names thrown out there like Caleb Williams from USC and so on and so forth. And I will get into that in another episode. My plan is to have a whole draft profile and start to list some of these guys and kind of do some more digging on them. But I think the most logical choice would be to go through the draft. That way, Sean Payton and the Brain Trust, they get their own guy to develop, and they get to see through what their vision for the offense will be, right or wrong. I think, and that's the most logical step. Obviously, the other part of it is free agency, and if you don't know that you can go get that guy in the draft, this may be where they go. Who that player would be, I don't know. I don't have a list of free agent quarterbacks, but I will tell you that the good ones cost money. And there is already going to be a sizable amount of money still tied up in Russ, even for next year. So while this is an option, I don't think it's the most likely option, especially with the cap hit. And the Broncos do have some financial decisions to make, and maybe not so much next season, but the season after that. So I don't know that they want to tie too much money up in that. And we saw from situations in Cincinnati with Joe Burrow, with Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes, is that you can add a lot of talent to your young quarterback when he's still on that rookie deal. It gives you a ton of financial flexibility. I think this is where Denver wants to go. They want to build with a new guy. Anytime you get a regime change, you want to build with your own guys. So I don't know necessarily going into free agency because, like I said, it's going to be expensive. And I think this will be the most likely scenario. Now, I'm going to give this some breath. Stay with me. There is a vocal minority, let's call it, that are proposing that this was the plan of Sean Payton the entire time, is to get Jarrett Stidham in the lineup because of how much they like Stidham. I take this with a grain of salt for a couple of reasons. One, he was signed to a 2-year deal. So you're essentially paying him to start next season, knowing full well that you would have benched Russ this year, even when Russ's contract is longer than Stidham's contract. I don't know. That I don't know. I think people are mistaking being a well-sought-after backup somehow makes them a viable starter, and that is not the case. Having a backup quarterback is essential in the NFL, since very rarely does a player go through an entire season healthy. So you need that, and I think Stidham's that player. Do I think he has some traits and some skills? Yeah. Do I think he's the long-term answer? Absolutely not. And if it does, oh my God, that should horrify you that the team thinks that. Now, for your sake, I don't think they do, but it's still important to realize that I don't think this is a serious option. So now we get to the part of the show where I talk about my own personal reactions to Russ getting benched. I'm going to come at it from the point of view of a fan, and then I'm going to come at it from the point of view of an analyst. From the analyst hat, I would say that you needed to make the move. And you needed to make the move for a couple of different reasons. A, the money. And if they ever tell you it's not about the money, it's 100% about the money. If Russ was, setting the world on fire and the offense was scoring points and we were in contention for winning the division and already had a playoff spot locked up, it wouldn't have mattered. He'd be the starter and there'd be no question about him being the starter going forward. Because none of that was happening, and the odds of it happening were declining every single week, that's why they made the move. You don't pay that much money to a player to be a game manager. And even though he was doing well as a game manager, the ceiling of where his play was at was just not going to move us any farther probably than we were already at now. So we could beat bad teams. We may even beat a good team every now and again. We weren't going to go very far playing that style of football, at least on offense. So as much as I hate seeing it, because Russ does seem like a very good guy, that it had to happen and the move had to be made. Now from the fan side of me, I don't want to say sandbagged. I don't want to say sabotage. I don't want to say any of that, because I think that's very short-sighted and it's not correct. NFL players, coaches, personnel, all of that, they are in a results-driven business. And if you don't get results, they'll go find somebody else. So to think that Sean Payton is infallible for the fact that he was going to sabotage his quarterback in order to get a guy that he wanted is laughable. And anybody who says that should not take themselves seriously as a fan or as a talent evaluator. That's all I'm going to say about that. But even I was so frustrated at seeing the offense just take these preseason game plans and trying to eke out these wins. And it was fun during the win streak, don't get me wrong. But then in the game versus Detroit, we didn't see that. Any aggressiveness. In the game last week where we needed to push the ball and to be aggressive, and we didn't see it. Not until it was too late. So as much as I didn't necessarily want to see this end because I wanted Russ to work out, I still think it was the best decision to make. And after we lost that game, I thought to myself that there wouldn't be a huge shock if he was benched. So to kind of sum everything up, it's cruel, it's unfair, but unfortunately, It's a results-driven business, and the results weren't meeting the money or the production that went behind the player. So in those cases, it's time to cut bait, and it's time to start over. So that wraps up another episode. I know this was kind of a depressing episode, honestly. To be honest, I didn't even really want to do an episode because all I knew we'd be talking about Russ. But I think that the team is going to have to take a step back in order to move forward. And anytime you have a regime change, these things happen. So that's as much solace as I can give and as much insight as I can give without actually being directly associated with the team. So it sucks in the short term, but I think better days are around the corner. And as an evaluator, I think so. And as a fan, man, I really do hope so. So again, thank you so much for your views, your comments, your likes. It all means a ton to me. Go ahead and keep doing that. Keep subscribing to me on YouTube. Keep leaving me comments. Keep liking. Give me stuff to interact with so I can interact with you. I'll also be posting my links to my Instagram and my TikTok. On my TikTok especially, I do watch-alongs on game day, so you can get my reaction, and I kind of break down the play as it's going on, and I can share my insights on you. It's also when I'm at my funniest. Not that I'm not already hilarious, but I can be a little bit more of myself than in kind of these scripted formats. So, as always, I love you guys. Have a great new year, and keep your eye on the ball, and I'll talk to you next time.